Mika, we got to get back to doing what's expected of us as free citizens in this democracy. That means being tolerant, being respectful, staying informed, and being engaged. I'm former Congressman Joe Walsh. Follow me here and join the millions of Americans who are renewing their social contract with each other. The social contract, it's on us. Hey, look, I don't mean to, and I don't like to jump right into a week, jump right into a Monday yelling and screaming, but I can't. I can't help it. I have to. Do not normalize him. Everybody repeat after me. Do not normalize Donald Trump. Stop. If you, like me, believed 4 weeks ago that he is an utter threat to our democracy, he remains that now. If you believed that 2 years ago, if you believed he believes he's above the law, he is a lawless guy, he is that now. He's still that now. If you believe when he said during the campaign that he wanted to be a dictator, he wanted to be an authoritarian, he's doing that now. Stop. Just because he won does not mean we treat him like a normal American president. He is not a normal American president. He believes he's above the law. He doesn't give squat about our democracy. He is thoroughly corrupt. He wants to be an authoritarian. That's not normal stuff. That is a threat. A threat to everything we hold dear in this country. Do not normalize him. He is anathema to America. Anathema to America. You can't normalize that. You just can't. Look, I believed during the campaign he's a threat. I said it. He is a real threat to our democracy. He tried to overthrow an American election. He believes he's above the law. He lies every time he opens his mouth. He's trying to divide us. He wants to greatly and dangerously expand the powers of the presidency. He's all of that, and he was all of that last year. He was all of that 4 years ago. He's all of that now still. So just because he won an election and we accept the results of that election, Kamala Harris did, Joe Biden did, we all do, the American people spoke. We accept who the American people chose. But we do not normalize him. No. Right now, he's declaring war on, he's acting out on his continued war on our democratic institutions right now. Look at his cabinet appointments. He just came out now. He came out and acknowledged that he intends to unconstitutionally use the military to enact his mass deportation. That is unconstitutional. He's talking about court-martialing generals who opposed him during his first term. That is unconstitutional. These are the actions of a dictator. Don't normalize that. Don't treat him. Do not treat him like a normal president. The reason I'm ranting is, and it may be stupid, right? Who cares about Morning Joe, that MSNBC political show early in the morning, Mondays through Fridays? Joe Scarborough, his wife Mika, Morning Joe and Mika. Morning Joe and Mika came on this morning and said that they secretly flew down to Mar-a-Lago this past weekend and met with him and sat down with Donald Trump. Morning Joe and Mika. Are you freaking serious? Huh? Excuse me? Joe Scarborough and Mika, you flew down to Mar-a-Lago this weekend and you secretly sat down with Donald Trump? What are you doing? What are you doing? Excuse me. You believe, as I believe, I know you believe this, I think you believe this because you said about Donald Trump during the campaign everything I said about Donald Trump. You said he was a would-be fascist. You said he wants to be an authoritarian. You said he's a pathological liar. You said, Joe and Mika, he's a threat to our democracy. You said, Joe and Mika, just like I've said on all of these, you said he's a threat to the rule of law. You said, Joe and Mika, he's utterly unfit to be president. You said all of that during this campaign, just like I said all of that during this campaign. And now 2 weeks after the election, you're sitting down with him? You're sitting down with an authoritarian. You're sitting down with a dictator. You're sitting down, Joe and Mika, with someone right now, who is attacking our democratic institutions. What are you doing? Did you not believe what you said during the campaign? Did you not believe Trump is a threat to our democracy? Did you not believe that if elected, he will become a dictator? Did you not believe any of that? Because I couldn't sit down with someone who is an utter threat to our democracy. I could not sit down with someone who has declared war on our democratic institutions. Joe and Mika, how could you do that? Or did you not believe everything you said a few weeks ago or a year ago? You know, there's this thing, right? Like, and I got it. Joe Biden, President Biden sat down with Trump last week. President Biden said Donald Trump is unfit to be president. Donald Trump is a threat to our democracy. I don't think he called Trump Hitler, but he said Kamala Harris said he's a fascist. Joe Biden said he wants to be a dictator. Joe Biden said he's anathema to America. If you believe all that, how can you sit down with him? How can you sit down with him? If you believe he is a real and direct threat to this country. So like a bunch of Trump supporters, rightly, in my mind, rightly, are coming out and saying, Joe Biden never really thought he was a fascist. Joe Biden didn't believe what he said about Trump during the campaign. All these people during the campaign who called Trump Hitler or said he's a fascist, well, clearly they don't believe it because now they want to sit down with him. Now they want to break bread with him. And at a level, I get that. I understand that. That makes sense. If you believe, as I believe, that Donald Trump is a threat to everything I hold dear about this country, I couldn't sit down with him. How could you if you believe that? Or do these people, these Trump critics like me during the campaign, did they not really believe everything they said? Joe and Mika, did you not believe? Were you just lying? Were you just putting that out there? Trump's a threat to democracy during the campaign. You said over and over and over and over. Did you not really believe it? Did you not really believe it? Okay, let me breathe for a second here. I get it. Joe and Mika, I get it. I get what you are trying to do, right? I'm going to assume the best about you, Joe and Mika. I'm going to assume that you really do believe in your head and your heart, as you said during the campaign, like I believe, that Trump is an existential threat to our democracy. I believe that. But he won. The American people spoke. And now you're reaching across the divide. You're reaching across the aisle to sit down with him. Because this country's dangerously divided. So we got to sit down with him. I get it, Joe and Mika. I understand what you're trying to do. I mean, heck, This has been what I've been trying to do for the last 5 to 6 years. I was an extremely divisive politician. I wanted nothing to do with the other side. I went after the other side, but I realized, right? I realized that that's a bad thing. And I realized that I was contributing to the dangerous divide of this country. And I realized that our democracy cannot stand if we stand this divided. So I launched this, Joe and Mika, I launched this podcast to address that. The social contract with Joe Walsh. Every week, Joe and Mika, I sit down with people who disagree with me. I will sit down with anyone of good faith who disagrees with me to try to find understanding, to try to find common ground. To do that, that's what I do with this podcast. That's what I did for a year with my good friend, Fred Guttenberg, our Two Dads Defending Democracy tour, as we went out and traveled the country, college campus after college campus, modeling how Fred and I disagree on guns, but modeling how you can respectfully disagree with people. Here's the key, though, Joe and Mika. Fred Guttenberg is a man of good faith. Listen to what I said, Joe and Mika. This is what I do every day and every week. I will sit down with anyone of good faith who disagrees with me. Anyone of good faith who disagrees with me to try to gain some understanding and find some common ground. But here's the deal. That ain't Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not a man of good faith. I sit down with Trump supporters all the time. I sit down with Donald Trump supporters every single day. I engage with and have conversations with Trump supporters every single day because the vast majority of them are people of good faith. Again, I'll sit down with anyone of good faith who disagrees with me, left, right, anywhere. Donald Trump is not a man of good faith. Not even close. He lies as he breathes. For 9 years, Donald Trump has declared war on democracy and the rule of law. If you try to overthrow an American election, you are not a man of good faith. Donald Trump right now, currently, Joe and Mika, look at the dictatorial things Trump is engaged in right now, putting unqualified loyalists in charge of our intelligence, in charge of our military, in charge of our Justice Department, in charge of the nation's health. Right now, Joe and Mika, he's attacking our democracy. You can't sit down with that. That's not a man of good faith. So Joe and Mika, unless, for example, you were able to get Trump to pull Tulsi Gabbard, who's a Russian asset, unless you were able to get Trump to pull that nomination, remember, Trump appointed Tulsi Gabbard, a Russian asset, to head up all of this nation's intelligence. Joe and Mika, unless you got Trump to stand down on that or to pull that nomination, by sitting down with Trump, unless you got something like that, by sitting down with Trump, Joe and Mika, you're normalizing him. You're only normalizing the threat he is. And man, that's all to his advantage. Once he's normalized, he's beaten you. We normalized him during the campaign. For a sufficient number of Americans who voted for him, he was normalized. They did not understand, they did not see, they did not believe the threat to democracy that he was. He was normalized and he won. The minute we normalize Trump, he's beaten you. He's beaten you. Again, I've made it my mission to sit down with damn near anyone. no matter how much they disagree with me, because I believe this country is dangerously divided. But for me to sit down with someone, anyone, no matter what you believe, you've got to be of good faith. You've got to be an honest broker, somewhat of an honest broker. Otherwise, there's absolutely no reason. Joe and Mika, Donald Trump's not an honest broker. He lies as he breathes. Joe, he accused you of murder. Mika, he accused you of just hideous things he said about you in plastic surgery. The point is, though, he's still a threat to democracy. The point is, as we speak right now, as you listen to me right now on this podcast, Trump's out and out at war with this country. Pick the hour of the day. Again, this morning, he's made clear that he's going to embark upon an unconstitutional plan to grab the military to enact his mass deportation. That's just one. He talked over the weekend about court-martialing generals who he didn't like. Remember that pollster, that Des Moines Register pollster who took a poll about a week before the election and showed Kamala Harris like 6 or 8 points up over Trump in Iowa? Trump yesterday called for a government investigation of a pollster, a private citizen. Joe and Mika, these are the actions of a dictator, an enemy of this country, anathema to this country, a traitor to this country. When you sit down with someone like that, like Joe and Mika, it's like right now, I'm sorry, guys. I know people don't want to hear this, but I'm sorry. Trump won a big battle a couple weeks ago. This war for the heart and soul of I was going to say the war for the heart and soul of America. Forget that. The war to defend our democracy, our democratic institutions, and the rule of law and the Constitution. The war is ongoing. Trump's attacking all of that. Trump's attacking the Constitution. He's attacking our democratic institutions. He's attacking democracy. He's attacking the rule of law right now. It's like we're engaged in a battle with him right now. Joe and Mika, you can't sit down with him in the middle of this battle, in the middle of this war. You help him. You normalize him. Respectfully, shame on you. Unless you don't believe he's a threat, unless you don't believe what I believe he is. And all I can base it on, Joe and Mika, is what you said during the campaign, that he is a threat. He's unfit. He is a threat to democracy and the rule of law. If you don't believe that, you need to come out now and say that. Otherwise, you look like big old hypocrites. Otherwise, you look like dupes. By sitting down with him, you've normalized him. He can't be normalized. He can't be normalized. We can't look at him as a normal American president because he's not. A normal American president doesn't attack our democracy, doesn't believe he's above the law, and doesn't pick people in his cabinet to destroy the very institutions they're supposed to oversee, the very agencies they're supposed to oversee. Like, we're up against it. And so this is why, again, Joe Biden was wrong. Joe Biden was wrong last week to invite Donald Trump to the White House. Do not normalize him. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris should not, must not go to Trump's inauguration. Do not normalize him. We accept and respect the will of the people. We accept and respect the election results, but we do not normalize who he is. Joe and Mika, you look like two media people who just want to stay relevant. You secretly go down to Mar-a-Lago? Seriously? Oh, my word. Again, I want to make a distinction. I want to make a distinction. I'll sit down with anyone of good faith who disagrees with me. We all got to do that. That's what I've been doing now for 5 years. That's what I do on a weekly basis with this podcast, The Social Contract with Joe Walsh. I'll sit down with somebody who disagrees with me on guns. I'll sit down with somebody who disagrees with me on forgiving student loan debt. I'll sit down with anyone who disagrees with me on supporting Ukraine. I'll sit down with anyone who disagrees with me about Donald Trump. Because the vast majority of people are people of good faith. The vast majority of people, to a degree, are honest brokers. Trump's neither. And just to close with this, I mean, I'll give you an example. This would never happen, right? Like Donald Trump would never reach out to me and say, hey, Joe, you want to sit down? Let's have an interview. Would never happen. But if I ever did sit down with Trump, like if I sat down with Donald Trump next week, if Trump invited me to sit down with him, 30 minutes, ask me anything. Let's have a conversation, Joe. You know what I do? This is the only way I would ever sit down with Donald Trump. I'd accept the invitation. I'd go to Mar-a-Lago. I'd sit down with him. And the first question out of my mouth at the beginning of that interview would be, Donald Trump, did you, in fact, lose the 2020 election? Say it now, sir. Did you lose the 2020 election? Did Joe Biden win fair and square? And the minute he lied, the minute he would not answer that question or lied, I'd ask him again, I'd ask him again, I'd ask him again. Mr. President, did you lose the 2020 election? Did Joe Biden win? And I'd continue to ask him that question until he gave me the truth, until he told me the truth, until he looked me in the eyes and looked the American people in the eyes and said, okay, you're right. Joe Biden won in 2020. I won in 2024, fair and square. Joe Biden won fair and square in 2020. Until Donald Trump told that truth and acknowledged the lie all these years, I wouldn't ask him another question. That's the only way I'd ever sit down with Trump. I would never move beyond that initial question. Sir, did you lose the 2020 election? Will you concede? Will you finally concede and tell the American people you lost? Unless he answered that question truthfully, I'd never move on to another question. I'd never move on to another topic. I'd never move on to another issue. And the interview would be over. Be over. Because Trump wouldn't give me the truth. He'd continue to lie. And I'd get up and leave. I would not move beyond that question if I ever sat down with Trump. I want America to get the answer to that question. Finally, the truth to that question. Did you lose the 2020 election, sir? Say it now. Say the truth now. And if he couldn't, I'm gone. That's the only way I'd ever sit down with Donald Trump. Joe and Mika, I bet you didn't do that. Guys, can't normalize him. If we normalize him, he's beating us. And if he's beating us, that means our democracy, our democratic institutions, and our rule of law is under attack. Don't normalize him. Call him out for what he is. He's not a normal American president. He is a pathological liar. He is a dictator. He is a threat to democracy and the rule of law. Resist him. Don't normalize him. Resist him. Joe and Mika, shame on you. Joe and Mika, come out tomorrow and apologize for what you did. Don't you dare. Don't sit down with Donald Trump again. Respectfully. Respectfully, someone like me who believes like you that Trump's a threat to democracy. Hey, thanks for listening, everybody. Hope you had TikTok. Hope you had a great weekend. My email, joewalshwhiteflag@gmail.com. All one word. Joe Walsh White Flag, Joe Walsh White Flag at gmail.com. Shoot me an email. Be brave, everybody.
Remember to listen, share, and follow The Social Contract with Joe Walsh on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere great podcasts are found. And be sure to leave a 5-star review. This has been The Social Contract with Joe Walsh.